Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. I don't know if we can get through this in 5 minutes, because one of the topics I think is at the cutting edge of what's going to confront labor for years to come. There's a lot of our debates have been historically over the last few years treating some of the challenges to work in America as if we're undergoing some sort of a cyclical challenge. This is not. This is a structural disruption of the very nature of the economy. We've had these before, the Industrial Revolution, except it's happening every 3 years instead of over a 50-year period. So the disruptions are extraordinary, they're fast, they're difficult to predict and anticipate. Senator Graham asked about artificial intelligence. The same is true for just automation in general. We have these debates about bringing factories back from Mexico. That would be great, but they're just going to be American robots instead of Mexican robots, but many of them, it'll be automation nonetheless. That's the reality. We can't turn the clock back unless we could, but it would be devastating to our economy to do so in terms of the nature of technology's role. I would just encourage, as these reports are prepared, artificial intelligence and these disruptions, I think they will provide, if we could somehow anticipate what the basic skills for the labor force in 10 or 15 years are going to be, I think it would be a valuable tool to states to develop curriculum and program to begin to address it, because the key worker 25 years from now is probably in grade school today. And if they're not acquiring those skills and there's no system in place to instill those skills, we're going to have a real challenge in terms of global competitiveness. So I hope we're not just viewing next year's needs, but the needs in 10, 15, 20 years, understanding how difficult it is to anticipate some of these changes. I've always told my youngest child, who's now 9, almost 10, the job that he may end up having probably hasn't been invented yet, so I don't even know what it's called, but nevertheless, that's that. On the certification, and you and I had a chance to talk about it a little bit, this extends into things like nursing and into healthcare. Some idea that we could help, at a minimum, incentivize states and perhaps create other avenues so that there be some short-term recognition. Say someone had a profession in the military, it's transferable to civilian life, and some period of time in which that license would be recognized, giving them the time to take the state licensing for whatever that capacity might be. I looked briefly at what the GI Bill covers. I believe it covers the costs of those certification tests. What it doesn't cover, potentially, I'm not 100% sure of this, but just my cursory research showed, is, and I know it's not within your department, but the cost of preparing for those tests. If you're going to take a nursing exam or to get a state license somewhere, you've got to study this stuff, and oftentimes the cost of doing so is education and capacitation. Maybe we can work on something in that regard. The two things I wanted to ask you about, I don't know if you've been asked about this yet, is the paid leave component of the budget. And I believe that paid leave is something that's a 21st century necessity. How we get there is complex. What's interesting as I've learned more and more about it is big companies, governments, large employers, and quite frankly, people that make a lot of money are offered paid leave, and many of the major corporations in America already offer it. So you see people that are making substantial amount of money also receiving paid leave. I don't want them to lose it. Has any thought been given, as you tailor the administration's proposal, to how we can kind of concentrate our efforts here on the people at the lower end of the income spectrum? In essence, the people that making the 25 to 65 or 70, 80, whatever the right number cutoff is. I don't want people that are making $300,000 a year to lose their paid leave, but I think the people that would really benefit from it and are most hurt by the absence of it are at the lower end of that scale. And this is an idea that's going to take some time to develop, but in terms of kind of working it out, has some thought been given towards kind of prioritizing at least whatever we do through government to be at that end of the scale as opposed to throughout the entire system? Because the fear, quite frankly, is that we create some sort of incentive for companies that are already offering it to offer less of it because this new alternative stepped up. So I know it's an idea that's still being worked on, but...
Senator, thank you for the comments and the question. Let me take them each in order fairly quickly. There's an interesting book that's been written that calls this the age of accelerations, because with each cycle, technology changes faster and faster. And so 10 years ago, the iPhone that I suspect most in this room have in their pocket, or the smartphone that they have in their pocket, didn't exist. Facebook was limited to college campuses, and sometimes we don't realize it's only been 10 years. So what will the world look like 10 years from now? It's almost hard to imagine because it hasn't been invented. And so one of the reasons that we've talked about demand-driven education is because we believe that it's very important that education and workforce education in particular be nimble enough to respond to changing workforce needs and to predict changing workforce needs, because technology will change the skills that are required. Moving quickly to your question regarding paid leave, the administration has put forward a proposal. I know that proposal has been discussed vigorously. There's some that say that it's not enough. There's some that say it's too much. There's some that say it's not calibrated. But ultimately, it is a proposal, and it is the start of a conversation that is a very important conversation. And I know that the Senate has engaged in it vigorously, and I know that you've taken a leadership role in it, Senator. And I am glad that conversation is being had, because at the end of the day, it is conversations like this one that will result in good outcomes.
Thank you, Senator Rubio.